Hey everyone, this is my new plane till. So I just recently made this plane till, and I just want to spend a few minutes today kind of talking through a few of the design elements. I've got a longer video that I'm going to post that has more of the design and construction process, kind of how I laid everything out, and you can kind of see how I put it together. But I wanted to go over a few things at a little higher level of detail in a shorter format here. Specifically, I kind of want to talk about the fact that this is one of the first projects I've made with no plan. So normally what I would do is sit down and draw something out, maybe do it in SketchUp or just on a piece of paper, and then I kind of would know what to cut when I came out to the shop, and I just kind of start getting to it and making it happen. This time I didn't do that. I really just kind of grabbed a piece of plywood, started laying things out, and came up with this. And I just kind of wanted to talk about that today, because I know, like, when I talk to a lot of beginning woodworkers, and really I'm not that far off from being a beginner. I haven't been doing woodworking really seriously for very long, more than a couple of years. One of the things that I constantly hear is, like, I see something, how would I build this? Or, man, I'd like to build that, but there's no plans available. So I think we can just talk about a couple of things that you can do to sort of help demystify how things fit together. And we'll just talk about it specifically for this project. So first we'll start talking about the layout and, you know, understanding what you need, because that's kind of the first thing most people think about when they're going to start a woodworking project is, I need a table or a cabinet or something like that, and I kind of want it to be about, you know, this big kind of thing. And you start to understand sort of the size and shape of what you're doing, and that part can be fairly intuitive. For me on this project, it was pretty much a simple matter of laying down a sheet of plywood, laying my planes out on it, and figuring out about, you know, what dimensions I needed it to be. And then I added some space here at the bottom where I could put another shelf, or eventually I'm going to put drawers in here. And you kind of get to the basics of a shape pretty quickly. And I think where a lot of beginning woodworkers struggle, and where I certainly struggled at the beginning of my woodworking adventure, was with the joints. You know, how do you pick the right joint, and what do you do? And it can be kind of mystical for a little while. You know, it's there's a lot of joints out there. If we think about, like, the fanciest joint we could think about, or one of the fanciest joints, it's the dovetail. You know, this one was cut on a machine. I have a router jig that helps me cut dovetails. It's a nice strong way to put two boards together when you are joining them, you know, edge to face like this. But, you know, you need some tools, or a lot of patience and a lot of practice with hand tools to put this together. And it's not really a joint that I still use very often. I really only use it when I want it to look really pretty. But it's not something I started out with, right? It's not an easy beginner's joint, at least in my opinion. So if you kind of go back to the other end of the spectrum, the other simplest thing you can do is you can take, you know, two boards and you can glue them together, right? And that is one of the weakest ways to join boards, because most of the time when you do that, you have what's called an end grain to face grain joint here, and that end grain joint, end grain end of the joint tends to really wick the glue away and makes it a weaker connection than it could be. So with plywood, since, you know, you have alternating layers of end grain and face grain, it's a little bit stronger, but still not the strongest joint in the world. So then you can improve that joint by adding nails or screws or biscuits or dowels, right? Even a step up from that is the mortise and tenon, where you cut the edge of the board down and you cut a mating slot in the other board and you stick them together. That's a very strong, very traditional joint. Again, as you kind of go up the chain, they get a little bit harder to do, right? Dowels, biscuits, especially mortise and tenon, they all have to be sized right to fit together. And for a beginner, they're good joints to learn for sure, but for a beginner, they can be kind of challenging. So once I kind of laid this out, I started to think about, all right, what joints do I need to use to put this together? Where do I need the strength and where do I not need the strength, and essentially what can I get away with using? And really it came down very simply. There's only two different joints in this cabinet, and that is a butt glued or just straight glued joint reinforced with nails, right? I use that for the top and bottom shelf, and then for the sides I use what's called a rabbet joint, where I took the sideboard and I cut a notch in the end that was sized to fit over the back of the piece of plywood. Now obviously these are two pieces of 2x4 I just had around that happen to have the right geometry on them, and what that does is it gives you a little bit more glue surface. The shoulder of the rabbet adds a lot of strength and stability to the joint as well, in addition to some extra glue surface there. And then I reinforce that with nails. So plenty strong. And I can show you a close-up of that. All right, so now we're looking at the bottom of the unit here, and at really the only other type of joint that's on this thing. And you can see right here in the corner we've got a rabbet joint, right? This is where I cut a rabbet in the side piece. It was the same depth or thickness as the thickness of the back of the board, and I could glue those two things together. And that really just gave me the little bit of extra strength I needed with some extra glue surface there. And I nailed through from the side into the back again. So again, a simple joint, easy to cut on a table saw, plenty strong for this application. All right, so why do I think I can get away with those joints? Let's look at the construction and the purpose of this and understand why I didn't need to go to dovetailed sides or box joints, or a step up from a similar joint to the rabbet would be a dado, where essentially the groove is in the middle of the board instead of on the end, and then your mating board goes in there. That's a very popular joint for shelves. You can see these in a lot of bookcases and things like that. It's very strong when you're trying to join the two pieces together, and then this piece is going to have downward force on it. It's also a relatively easy joint to make, even for a beginner. You can lay it out properly and cut this groove with a router and a straight edge, or a router table if you have one, or a table saw if you have one. You might need to use a dado stack or make multiple passes. This dado here was actually made with multiple passes of just a standard table saw blade. But I didn't think I needed to go to that trouble. If you look at this, the shelves I have here aren't bearing any weight at all. If you look, the planes are hung directly off the backboard, right? And I have just very light weight sitting on the shelves. So I have like my shoulder plane here and a little hammer that I use for adjusting plane blades. Even the shelf down here, which I'm going to put some drawers in eventually, isn't holding a ton of weight, so there's not a lot of force against that joint. And then understanding my materials, where it is plywood to plywood, so the glue strength is better than it might be for like end grain wood to long grain wood or face grain wood. Reinforced with a few nails, plenty of strength, because it doesn't have to take any racking forces or heavy loads from above. Same thing on the sides. If you look at the sides, they're really not doing any work here either. They're not holding the planes in, there's no doors. They're really don't lend much structurally to this cabinet at all. So, well, they are responsible for, going to be responsible for holding all of this up. I did want a little more strength than just a straight up butt glued joint like this, so I added the rabbet, and again I used the nails to help hold it all together. There's really not a lot of strength there, so did I need to take the time to lay out the dados and cut dados into the sides and into the back for the drawer fronts? I didn't really feel like I did. I could make it faster, spend less time, and have all the strength I really needed on that. Now, if this were anything else, a lot of the same principles would apply, right? Might not need to be a plain till. Maybe I want to build something similar to this and put it in the house and hang, make different hangers to hang keys or plates or umbrellas or shoes or anything you can think of, knickknacks. Maybe I would want this to be like a bookcase, right? Now I would start to think differently, because books can be kind of heavy, and all of a sudden the shelf is going to be bearing more weight, and the more it tries to deflect, the more it could pull things kind of out of square or try and tilt those sides in or something. So I may have gone to a dado if I thought I was going to have a heavier load on here, right? And that's just kind of the thinking that you'll go through as you start to understand these joints a little better. And you can kind of look at the purpose of a thing and the types of forces it might see and understand what's most appropriate. So, I think you may not need a plain till in your woodworking status right now. You might not have enough, or you might have a better or different storage solution, but something like this, a simple wall hanging unit, you could kind of follow along the same build process, right? Lay out what you need, figure out how big it's going to be, understand what you want it to look like. Like I could have left these square, but instead I gave them a little bit of a taper just for easier access and aesthetics for the most part. And then just kind of build your way up. So there you have it. A little discussion on how I arrived at the two different types of joints I used for this. It's a simple project. It was simple joinery, and it was fun to build, going through it on the fly. So I hope, as you kind of let this sink in and as you kind of look at more projects and see more things, you'll kind of start to think about it in that context, right? Different joints have different strengths and weaknesses, and as you look at a piece, you can kind of start to understand how to apply those, almost like Lego bricks, right? Where do they belong, and how does it make the piece come together and stay together? And it's eventually won't be as hard as it might seem on the surface, right? You'll try things, and you'll learn things, and you'll have success, and you'll have some not so much success, but you'll develop, and it'll just get easier. So, real simple project. Maybe it spurred an idea in your head, and you can make something similar to suit your purposes. This was a good project for me. Organization of the shop has been kind of a focus here. As I go between projects, I realize that my shop holds me back sometimes. So this not only was a learning experience, but also now will make all my future projects easier, better, more efficient, and wasn't too hard. So thanks for watching. I think soon I'll have the longer sort of build video up, and in that I'll talk more in detail about the layout process and kind of what I'm thinking as I go through. So you can check that out. I'd appreciate it, and maybe it'll help you out too. You can see me do some things right and some things wrong, and arrive at the finished piece in that one. So thanks again. If you enjoyed this, hit the like and subscribe if you're inclined to look at some stuff I might post in the future. I'd appreciate it. And have a good woodworking day.